Good morning, class. We are going to continue our previous lesson. In the previous lesson, we already learned to find information in a short conversation in an audio. And I'm sure that you all already a master in finding information from a conversation. So today we are going to continue the activity to improve listening skills from longer video. I want to know and measure how well you can grasp the information from a longer video, and I hope you can engage with the activity. So right now I will play an audio. The audio is about a lecture. After that, I will check your comprehension by asking some questions randomly, and you can also state your opinion about some statements in the audio. And you only can take note, but only the numbers and name of the places. You may not write the whole statements.
This recording is from the British Council. Earlier on in today's lecture, I mentioned the importance of hand gestures and said that I'd touch on some of these. Pardon the pun. Hand gestures are, of course, often culturally bound and can vary from group to group. But there are a few of them which, if not universal, are very common indeed around the world. I'd like to focus on the history of 4 gestures in particular: the salute, the thumbs up, the high five, and the handshake. The salute, a gesture most associated with the military, may have originated in the 18th century. The Grenadier Guards, one of the oldest regiments of the British Army, used helmets in the form of cones. These were held in place by chin straps. It was difficult to raise your helmet when greeting someone, so the soldiers simply touched their head with one short movement of the hand before quickly putting it back down again at their side. The thumbs up gesture apparently goes back a lot further. It's widely believed that this gesture goes back to Roman times, when gladiators fought in front of the emperor and eager crowds in the Colosseum. The fallen gladiator's fate was decided by the audience. If they felt he had fought well, they showed their approval with a thumbs up gesture. The emperor would then confirm this and thereby would spare the gladiator's life. If the crowd gave a thumbs down, on the other hand, that meant execution. However, there are no reliable historical references to thumbs going either up or down in the Colosseum. It may be that if the crowd wanted to spare the gladiator's life, then they would actually cover up their thumb and keep it hidden. They would only extend their hand and thumb if they wanted the gladiator killed. This actually makes more sense, as the emperor could much more easily see what the crowd was indicating when looking out over a huge arena. The high five hand gesture is almost universally used as a greeting or celebration. Many see its origins in baseball. 2 US teams lay claim to inventing the high five: the Los Angeles Dodgers in 1977 or the Louisville Cardinals in 1978. It's quite likely that it was neither, and the gesture might have a much earlier origin again. It is very similar to a 1920s jazz age gesture known as the low five or giving skin. This gesture involved people slapping each other's lower hands, also in celebration. There are, in fact, numerous references to the low five in films of the era. Perhaps the high five is just an evolution of that gesture. The final gesture I'm going to mention today is the handshake. It dates back as a greeting at least as far as ancient Greece. In the Acropolis Museum in Athens, the base of one of the columns shows goddess Hera shaking hands with Athena, the goddess of wisdom and courage. It's thought that shaking hands rather than bowing or curtsying showed both parties as equals. In 17th century marriage portraits in Europe, we find many examples of handshakes between husband and wife. Now, of course, the handshake has a multitude of uses: meeting, greeting, parting, offering congratulations, expressing gratitude, or completing an agreement. In sports or other competitive activities, it is also done as a sign of good sportsmanship. In this way, the gesture has not strayed from its original meaning to convey trust, respect, and equality.
This recording is from the British Council. To find more activities to practice your English, visit www.britishcouncil.org/learn English.
So that's the lecture. It's fascinating, right? How hand gestures can have different meaning from time to time. Now I want to ask Reza, from what you already heard, what do you think is the main discussion of the lecture?
I think the lecture is explained about the history of Manchester throughout the time. And the lecture focused on describing the history of four gestures in particular. The salute, the thumbs, the high five, and the handshake. Additionally, the lecture also mentioned the purpose of the gesture in the specific era, Miss.
Yep, that's correct. It's true that the lecture is about the history of hand gestures over the centuries. Good job, Reza. You seem to be able to get the information quickly. Now that Reza already mentioned that the lecture also explained the purposes of hand gestures, I want to ask Fahmi, what is the difference between the uses of handshake gesture that people do nowadays versus in the ancient Greek era?
Actually, in the ancient Greek era, handshake gesture used by the Hera and with Athena, the goddess of wisdom and courage. It's thought that shaking hands rather than bowing or saying showed both parties as equals. Meanwhile, today, people use handshake in multiple use such as meeting, greeting, parting, offering congratulation, expressing gratitude, or completing an agreement. In sport or other competitive activities, it is also done as a sign of a good sportsmanship. Yeah, that's all.
Well, yeah, it's true. We can still see the difference among the uses of handshake throughout this century, even though they all have good purpose. The handshake gesture purposes are to convey trust, respect, and equality. And lastly, Reza, could you please tell us your opinion about the most interesting facts from the lecture?
Yeah. In my opinion, the most interesting fact from the lecture is that the salute is come from the army difficult to rise the helmet. The British army used helm in the form of cones, and these were held in the place by Sintra. It was difficult to raise your helmet when greeting someone. So the soldier simply touched the head with one short movement of the hand before quickly putting it back down again. At the side, and in Roman times, where a thumb's gesture could determine someone's life. And then as a fun gladiator fate was decided by the audience, if they felt he had fought well, they showed the approval with a thumb's gesture. And the emperor would, would then confirm this and thereby would spare a gladiator life. And if the crowd gave a thumbs down, on the other hand, that meant execution. That's all.
Well, yeah, That's very fascinating facts. Can you imagine a person's life depends on the audience hand gestures? But what I find interesting from the lecture is in the 17th century, marriage portraits in Europe that we find many examples of handshakes between husband and wife. It's like we couldn't find anyone use handshake for that purpose anymore nowadays.
Mhm.
So I think that's all today's activity. I think all of you can grasp all informations and even more, you could think about what's interesting from the lecture. So it is beyond my expectations. For our next lesson, I want you to find an audio that you prefer, any kind of audio. This activity is to learn extensive listening skills. So see you in the next class. Thank you.